Ours is an economy strained by inflation, corruption, insecurity, weak systems, and policies. And in such economies, youth empowerment becomes even more critical. Our sister is a season of renewal, a season for sacrifice, and of course, renewed hope, if I may use that phrase. Our conversation this morning underscores renewed hope for the youth and if there's actually light at the end of the tunnel. Joining us this morning in studio to discuss youth empowerment in Nigeria in times like this is Nwachukwu Nnamdi, an economist and data analyst. Good morning, Nnamdi, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Happy Easter, by the way.
Yeah, especially all the same.
Okay, so funny story. I've had this conversation with people and they keep telling me they actually forgot this is Easter weekend.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? Especially among our youth. Why do you think people keep forgetting? Oh, I didn't even remember this was Easter weekend. I mean, why do you think that is? That has become an issue. Usually you hear it, everywhere, it's everywhere. You could perceive it everywhere. But these days, what is going on?
Well, I could actually attribute it to Nigeria becoming less religious. Unlike those days when Nigeria was actually engulfed with a lot of religious consciousness, these days there's actually a massive change of paradigm in terms of religious inclinations. And you could also say because of maybe the prevailing macroeconomic circumstance that is actually affecting everybody, where we have some macro challenges and other dimensions. So from my own opinion, these are actually the two variables I think that are responsible for this Easter period not to have received that touch of awareness and all.
I guess so. I guess
exactly.
The distractions, the economic distractions.
Yes.
And why do you think there's a change in paradigm? Because whenever there's a change in paradigm, there's usually an event or there's always something that happens that brings about a change in paradigm. Why do you think that's, or what do you think is that paradigm that brought, or that change that brought this paradigm where people are less religious?
Well, I could say from personal experience and from those I've actually had deep interactions with, I say most of our religious ideologies have been infiltrated by fake and gimmicks. So, and a lot of youths, the kind of people we're having these days are people that ask questions, and they have thrown questions to some of our religious institutions and the religious ideologies that they are not getting the right answers or satisfiable answers. They keep getting utopian responses that do not hold any water or can be measurable. So with those kind of ugly developments, yes.
Responses that are not measurable.
Exactly. So with that kind of ugly development, the youths are beginning to shift their focus from so much religious consciousness to things that they term to be real. Exactly.
Now, do you think this is a good paradigm?
Well, I could say it's a paradigm of two-edged sword. From one dimension, I think it's good because it's good you subject some things you doubt. When you ask questions, you should receive measurable answers. Okay? When you doubt something, when something to you is not real, and you're making efforts to find out how real it is, and you're able to be provided such answers, I think it's nice. But when you are not, it's going to force you to begin to change your consciousness and your focus. Then the other angle, I feel it may not be so good, because if these youths are not given an alternative, or the individuals, it mustn't only be youths, if they don't have another alternative on what to believe in or what to anchor their belief systems on, they may be distracted or misdirected into things that are not really in line with societal desires and expectations. So, but that's why there's need to for there to be a balance. Between these two extreme dimensions.
Yes, you're right. Now there's this hypothesis.
Yes.
It's not, of course, it's a hypothesis, it's not proven, but I use it a lot. It's actually my personal, solution to some things.
Yes.
It's an acronym, ASK. Try to ask the right questions.
Yes.
Then in asking the right questions, you seek the right answers from the right sources, right?
Yes.
And by that, you get quality knowledge to act better, because when you know better, you act better, right?
That's nice.
Now, do you think our youth, they are asking the right questions to the right people? They are not getting, if you're a researcher, of course you don't get data from one source. That will make it unreliable. So do you think our youth, they are not really asking the right questions to the right people? They are not trying to seek, the answers they need. They are not going out of their way to seek answers from, other sources, and they are just arriving at a particular, inference, and it's going to be dangerous. Why am I saying this? You know of the Okite and what's happening in Anambra State. It's a very bad paradigm. So do you think we are in a hurry for change, that we are not asking the right questions and we are just moving in the direction as if we are, that head mentality, everybody's heading to the right, to one direction that might be, cataclysmic?
Yeah, well, in response to that, first of all, I want to express my sincere confidence in the average Nigerian youth. The average Nigerian youth is not a misdirected soul, or it's not a kind of person that you're not going to depend on. They are asking the right questions. That has been solidified.
Okay.
Because there are gaps, or what I call discrepancies,
yes,
that will lead you to begin to ask to fill the gap. I think there are. And another thing is, it all depends on the dimensions of the questions they are asking. Could it be economic questions or religious questions? Because all these things are interconnected.
Sure.
They're interconnected. Now, the Okite development, you ask yourself, why are the youths engaging in such an absurd project? I call it a project. It's simply because they don't have a better alternative. I have to say that, because I'm a kind of person that whenever I want to analyze issues, I do not want to start laying blames on the government.
Oh, sure.
I first of all look within to ensure that we have explored and harnessed what is within before we begin to look outward. So, but I think based on some restrictions of how these youths were raised, they have been restricted to a particular setting or scope. And so they're not going to ask questions beyond that scope. So they want to survive within the circumference of that scope. So when they see that within that scope that they were exposed to, they are not able to get the answers that they need, they begin to engage into some negative alternatives.
Okay, you know what they say, if you squeeze grapefruit, you get grape juice.
Yes.
If you squeeze an orange, you get an orange juice. I'm curious as to why they would tend towards things like rituals, all these vices, just to survive. Doesn't that tell of a deeper problem that could be from a breakdown of the value system? Let's take the church out of this. I know that there are some discrepancies.
Of course.
But
don't forget that these people were raised in, some of them are raised in Christian environment.
Yes,
so
but they came from a family. I spoke with the bishop and he said that the family is your entrance and exit from this world.
Yes.
The Bible says something that God made people and put them in families for a reason. Now, do you think there's a breakdown of value that has actually, transformed into these ugly outcomes we are seeing in kidnappings, ritual, in murder, all kind of banditry, criminality? Speak to the breakdown of value system and how it has affected the Nigerian youth.
Okay, you first of all exonerated the religious sector.
I did not.
Oh, well,
I
okay.
said, let's leave them. You said
but that's also an act of exoneration.
No. I didn't exonerate anybody. I'm just saying, leave them out of the equation now. Now, this is a different chemical reaction. All right? Leave them out of the equation. Let's tackle this one.
Okay.
Breakdown of the value system.
Okay.
What's the role of the family?
Okay.
Why did we get it wrong in the family unit?
All right. This is actually a deep analysis because it has some chains of causality.
I think we have time.
Okay. When you begin to trace it and trace, one of the projects I'm carrying out now is how to raise a super African child.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Fabulous.
I've actually been going to a lot of radio stations, and it's actually a campaign that I'm carrying out, and I feel it's one of the missions I have to execute before I leave this
Your
earth.
purpose,
Yes, that's my purpose. So, having done extensive research about child development, I found out that everything starts from the family, like you rightly said. The family is actually your first introduction to the world. Yeah, you came into a family, through your mother and all. So that is where things started going wrong. Because you find out that a lot of parents, even according to some statistics released by the UNICEF, a lot of parents are not getting it right from the foundation. One of the hypotheses or one of the proxies I tell people that every child needs to experience optimal development, there are 3 dimensions: a healthy brain development, confidence development, and spiritual development. These are the 3 dimensions. From the research I have concluded, I found out that these 3 dimensions, if they are well articulated in the child, if parents are intentional with these 3 dimensions, every child will grow to become a productive adult. When the parents ensure that the child experiences a healthy brain development, the child experiences confidence development, and the child experiences spiritual development. Now,
does this speak to the triune nature of man, spirit, soul, and body?
Well, of course, somehow, whether directly or indirectly, it mustn't be in a linear function, but of course, they actually speak into those dimensions. Now, but I want to skip the first and the second one. Of course, if you don't experience a healthy brain as a child, it's going to affect you as an adult. In fact, we have linked a lot of adult misbehaviors because of the experience, childhood poor brain development. Yes, poor brain development. If I have to share some of the research output here, I mean, this may not be the appropriate time to share some of those analyses, but poor brain development has resulted into a lot of things that we are fighting today in the lives of youth and adults, but people could not link it. Now, the second dimension is about confidence development. When a child grows without a confidence, without huge confidence impartation, it also affects their adolescence, their young adulthood, and their late adulthood. Now, the third one is actually where I want to emphasize on, which leads me straight to giving responses to the question you asked or your query: spiritual development. And whenever I mention this spiritual development, people think I'm going to talk about churches and God. No, I've always emphasized that the role of a parent is to train up a child the way the child should be, and when the child grows, the child will not depart from it. What does that mean? Watch your child. Have a deep observation of your child's giftings and talents.
Observe your child.
In fact, that is intentional parenting. It's not just to take your child to school and drive to work and drive to business. Of course, I understand that sometimes the economic circumstance can lead parents into getting so busy.
And then you get busy, make money, and you lose your child.
And you lose your child. So, but if a parent can be intentional enough to watch his or her child and to know where the child is, where the child has more gaps or in terms of the giftings of the child. And if you're able as a parent or parents to direct that child into areas of their giftings, you are developing the child spiritually. In fact, when I have studied the global billionaires, in fact, the owners of this cosmos, the economic giants of this cosmos, I found out that during their childhood years, their parents were able to direct them into things that they saw the child have affinity with. Someone like Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook we all use, the father discovered that the child has affinity with computerization, and he employed a private teacher to teach Mark Zuckerberg programming. Today we cannot do without Facebook. So I'm trying to link it to what you asked. So if parents miss it at all this foundation level, if parents miss all these gaps, of course the adult or the youth will grow to become misdirected because he or she was not nurtured in these 3 dimensions effectively. Imagine even the richest man in the world right now, Elon Musk, who is almost rated at $330-something billion. He is the manufacturer of the electronic cars, Tesla and SpaceX. Even when he was 3 years old, the mom discovered that he has an exceptional mental ability, and the mom channeled him to computer world, and today we are all celebrating him.
You are so right.
Yeah.
I also play around, not really. I'm into charity, non-governmental, for kids with special needs.
Yes.
I read this book before we get into our empowerment.
Yes.
I read this book by Think and Grow Rich.
By what's his name again? Think and Grow Rich by now it's coming to my head now.
We'll remember his name, don't worry.
Napoleon Hill.
Yes. Now he said something. The book was about empowerment, economic empowerment.
Yes.
But I picked out something interesting, which you just collaborated. He had a son with special needs that couldn't hear because he didn't have an ear.
Yes.
He was told to institutionalize the child because at that time that was what, if a child is deformed, you put the child in an institution. This man refused and said that he knows that this child was born for a purpose. However, he's going to put in the child the desire to succeed, such that the child will be independent and productive. And that was exactly what happened with Blair on the Blair, his son. He was a special child, but he was the one that took after the father and went all over the world, doing things and making impact.
Yes.
So it's important parents actually observe their children.
Yes.
I'm talking about a child with special needs.
Imagine.
How much more?
Yes.
It will work out for a child that is, a normal, that
Exactly.
is normal in quotes. So
Yes.
I think your submission is spot on, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to empowerment. You know that there's been a lot of empowerment schemes. There was Empower.
Yes.
There was UN. I think there's currently Smeden and
Yes.
some other. You know how people, this phrase has been making the round, this is scam, school is scam, church is scam.
Yes. Yes.
It's Nigerian Youth Empowerment scam. What are your thoughts?
Okay. Well, it's a positive project when observed objectively. Of course, to empower people is a policy or activity in the right direction. But what matters now is, who are the people empowered and why are they empowered? Do you get what I'm saying? Empowerment as a word, empowerment as an activity. To empower people is a positive thing. Of course, these financing schemes, to help people to go into entrepreneurial activities, it is actually a desirable macroeconomic variable or whatever you can call it. But what matters is, who are the people empowered and why are they empowered? But when you have to look deeply into it, like I rightly said before, I try to emphasize the issue of self-discovery. Like, if your parents were not able to channel you to your area of giftings, I do not support the empowerment programs. It has to come after a particular thing has happened. And I think we are going to that direction.
Making it more intentional.
Making it more intentional. And now, a lot of people don't like to hear some what I'm about to say now, because I'm not going to blame the government.
Say it anyway. We need to hear the truth.
Yeah, because we've been. My father blamed the government. His father blamed the government. His father's father blamed the government, and it became a cycle of intergenerational cycle of blame.
A vicious cycle.
Yeah, and when you heap criticisms on another institution, it
shuts down
even your creativity and your innovative abilities. People should learn to look within. I know they're still going to say, after looking within, government and go. People should learn to look within and to embark on the journey of self-discovery.
How do you do that?
Well, I don't know if there's ample time for us to discuss that.
Summarize.
I'm just going to give some tips. Well, you have to engage into what I could call some spiritual activities by meditation. When you want to look within, it calls for internal silence. It's actually a journey on its own. That is for those whose parents were not able to discover when they were still early childhood years. Since your parents were unable to do that for you, you need to engage in internal meditation.
When you use meditation, I have this issue.
Yes.
And I find it mostly around the Christian space, where we use Christian jargons and we use words that we don't understand.
Yes.
You understand? I'm not saying you're using jargons. I'm just saying when you say people should meditate, is meditation prayer? Is meditation just thinking? What is meditation exactly?
Well, that was why I said you said I should summarize it. I gave you a summarized expression. But meditation is also a form of prayer, but it's actually beyond prayer, because prayer itself sounds religious. To pray, some of them vocalize prayers and think they're praying. Meditation is looking within, in a state of silence.
There's no form of muttering. There's no form of imagination.
If there's need for you to mutter, meditation for what we're discussing right now is you're trying to look within to know why you are here.
Yes.
So if there's need for you to mutter, you have to mutter. These things will come spontaneously. They're going to come as a reflex action. It's not something that you premeditated that you're going to mutter. Maybe you could, in that state of meditation, that state of silence, you are trying to embrace your real self. You are trying to shut down every societal influence, every parental influence that might have misdirected you from who you really are. That's why I said it's going to be a program for another day. In fact, it should even be a program on itself,
its
because
own.
that's what a lot of people need to do. A lot of persons don't even know who they are. They've not even discovered themselves. And this is one of the channels that Africa or Nigeria can experience massive growth and development on the long term. If people can be taught, if the youth can be taught, because without that meditation to discover who you are, they are bound to be misdirected. And that is what yields societal negative outcomes of all the.
Because they must channel their energy
somewhere. That's the youthful age is a window of opportunity, just like the early childhood years. So the way you harness it determines what happens after. Okay, determines what happens after. So that's one of the strategies you have to. And while meditating, you are shutting down a lot of things that may try to distract you from your real self.
Okay.
And all. So it's going to be a program for another day.
Absolutely.
I don't think you have the ample time to expound and to.
So what you're saying is youth empowerment should start from the youth.
Good. It should start from the youth. Very important, because when you discover who you really are, self-discovery comes with some form of magnetism. So whatever empowerment you are receiving, you are channeling it to enhance what you've discovered about yourself, not because you want the money to start any business. Some people actually engage in businesses because they saw that other people are profiting from it. That is why we have a lot of failed businesses everywhere.
I overheard, I was in my office and some young people were talking. I just overheard what they were saying. And the young girl was saying something. She said that millennials, or people like me, we have put in a lot of work, and by that we have gained some things, some material things, and of course relationships. But the Gen Zs, they want what the millennials have without putting in the work.
Exactly.
How do we begin to change this paradigm?
Okay, well, it's another deep question.
Why are we asking only deep questions this morning?
Because Nigeria is in a deep situation.
It's a deep situation.
Yeah, so first of all, would I say, I'm not trying to say that our education system is scam, like they popularly say. But when a child
But you'll agree that is long overdue for
yes,
overhaul.
Of course. In fact, it's one of the institutions. Our present system of education has done more harm than good when looked at objectively. I always give people an instance, but they say it's actually a crude analysis that before the invasion of this foreign culture, before the invasion of the colonial masters, we had a form of education that knew nothing like unemployment. That was our authenticity. You know, people will tell you, but they were not refined. I said, yes, we can still borrow from that. And that is why some countries now are studying some of the systems that we used to fight unemployment in those days. Apprenticeship. Yes.
I think in Harvard.
Of course. In fact, it's really
our
unfortunate.
Justice system, our health system.
Yes.
Why do we adopt rather than adapt?
Exactly. So really, you know, when I studied, when I embarked on a historic research to actually know what was happening before the colonial masters invaded us, I discovered that unemployment was a strange word. That the youth was not doing anything, that the youth was not empowered into a skill was strange. In fact, it was termed laziness because they were so aligned with nature. You can learn trades, you can go into hunting. Even in terms of health, we had those who discovered that they had some
healing abilities.
Yes, even psychiatric intelligence.
Talking about health, let me even shock you and shock our audience.
Yes.
I got this from a doctor. He was telling me that he did some of the studies that you did, historical studies of his area of expertise. And
yes.
Saying in those days, you had nothing like infertility. Not that people were not, they didn't have people who couldn't give birth, but they had traditional ways of solving it that was culturally relevant to everybody.
Exactly.
Coming down to our recent infertility treatments, they are expensive. The value chain, at the end of the day, you're packing all the money here, you're changing it in dollars, you're sending it out. So you see what I'm talking about. So my question really is, how can the youth begin to harness, because you spoke to looking introspectively.
Yes.
How can we begin to harness, what we have rather than looking to what another person has. Because you did say that youth empowerment starts with the youth.
Yes. Well, before I answer that question, I want to actually, sound this way, that even some of our religious institutions, or would I say the church, or would I even say Christianity, some of them contributed to making us to, relegate the efforts of our ancestors. They tried to shut down that as ancestral acknowledgement and awareness, where they say our ancestors did this and that, you should pray against your ancestors. Sometimes you go to church. Exactly. Sometimes you go to church, they tell you, face your father's house and begin to pray against it. I mean, this is your father's house that gave you a land and identity, and you're praying against them. These are people that had individuals that had orthopedic intelligence, psychiatric intelligence. These are people that looked at a palm tree and saw that there is wood in this palm tree. There is the best palm wine. That's the best wine in the whole world. Palm wine. There is food for our goats. There is sponge. There is palm oil. These are men of creativity, and yet an ideology came and told you that they did this, they killed twins, they did this. A lot of exaggerated negative paradigms they try to sell them with. So I think I really need to, put a caution to that, for them to stop laying emphasis about ancestral curses, ancestral limitations, because those things are not real. But let me come back to what you actually said.
That's huge.
Yes, seriously. So I still emphasize that our youth should begin to recollect. I emphasize on ancestral awareness. When I sound ancestral, people think I'm one Amadioha agent, or so I begin to say, are you a Dibia?
But even in Christian religion, the Torah,
yes,
you would see fathers,
yes,
gather their kids and start telling them stories. Our father Abraham was
exactly
called out of the land of Chaldeans.
Yes,
the Lord took him to this place. He was he settled here, married this person, gave birth to the 7 sons. They went into captivity. The Lord himself delivered them out of captivity. So we need people who will tell these stories. Do we have people who tell these stories? I want to call your attention on a news item that we read this morning on, I think, the Punch. Yes, Saturday Punch. It says, when fathers vanish, silent scars of abandoned children.
Wow.
Who will tell the stories to these young ones? How will they know? Even the Bible says, I'm trying to paraphrase, how would they know if there's no teacher?
Yes.
And how will the teacher, if the teacher is not sent or something like that? So there has to be a message, there has to be a teacher, and there has to be an audience. So we have an audience, our youth, our teaming youth. There's a message, we know. Oh, where are the teachers?
The teachers are you and me. And a medium like the Signature TV is also part of the teaching system. And for us to even raise more teachers, we need more aggressive orientation, because the persons that were supposed to be these teachers, most of them are even disoriented because of 1 or 2 religious bombardments that they are actually suffering from.
Brainwash.
Yeah, brainwash. Because how can I be here chorusing Abraham blessings are mine, whereas Abraham represents an ancestor to some other persons, and I've left my own ancestors,
that God gave you.
That God gave me. So in this context, I say that our own teachers are the people that will be exposed to programs like this, and our own intentional ability to ensure that this message is widely spread across.
Great. Yes. 1 minute parting shots. Is there something else you want to put out there? 1 minute parting shot. Is there any advice, submission, whatever you want to put out there for people to hear?
Well, the only advice I need to put out there is that every youth should actually start looking within. They should employ every strategy that is within their disposal to look within, because their destiny is within and not external.
Absolutely, especially given the fact that corruption is a thing in our society, and most of the time these empowerment schemes are already they're already, you know what I mean.
I understand.
All right, fabulous conversation. Thank you so much, Nnamdi. I had a great time. I'm sure someone listening to you did. So thank you for your time on the show.
You're welcome.
All right.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.